Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet another Incursio the Gamer Dungeons & Dragons quick build video. Today we have with us the Erlking Heathcliff. And of course, spoilers ahead, if you have not played Canto 6, I advise you come back later, unless you don't plan on playing Limbus Company or already completed it. Feel free to stay. Now, before we get into this, I have a couple things to say. One, I'm back in the room. The roommates are out partying. It's 9 p.m. on a Thursday night, and I ate a charcuterie board instead of, going out and drinking. It's not really my style, so I like cheese as well. But anyways, besides that, I'm building the Catherine. Don't worry, she'll be out. And this is going to be uploaded in the morning of Halloween, so I'll see you all then. Happy Halloween. Let's talk about Erlking Heathcliff, by the way. So, real quick rundown of his actual, personality in Limbus. He is just Heathcliff, but from a mirror world where Catherine dies and Heathcliff blames himself to the point where all Heathcliff must die. In addition to that, he is the final boss of Canto 6, alongside every Catherine. And they make a pretty good duo. I really enjoyed that fight. I actually did that fight during my graduation, my high school graduation. So, I have lots of fond memories about it. So, let's get into the D&D build now. Erlking Heathcliff, medium humanoid, chaotic evil. I figured that's the one that suited him most. He's chaotic. He's evil. He's killing every single Heathcliff. Now, of course, moving on from that, AC 20, hit points 538. It's a little low in comparison to what I normally do. Speed 40, 60 while he's mounted on the Dullahan. Now, before we move on from that, challenge rating, it's bullshit. As we all already know, I don't know how to measure this out, I'm gonna be completely honest. But if I had to say, he would be a pretty good solo fight if it's just him, against like maybe 4 level 12 players. And then if he's also doing alongside Catherine, maybe 4 level 14 players. That's just me, though. I figure because most of my players metagame, that's a pretty good benchmark, because they've beaten stronger with less levels. So, moving on from that, stats. If you have a stat allowance, I suggest Strength, Con, and Wisdom as your high stats, Dex up next, and the rest are dump. If not, these are the suggested stats that I'm looking at, Strength being the highest, Con, Wisdom being the next. Saving throws are Strength, Con, and Wisdom, of course. Skills, Deception, Intimidation, Perception are all high, and Insight is your expertise. Damage resistances. I'll talk about them later as to why, but fire, necrotic, and non-magical attacks, as well as immune to poison, immune to charm, frighten, and poison conditions as well. Now, for senses, blind sight 20 feet, even though he couldn't see Catherine in that mirror dimension, but he could hear her. He knew her presence was there. In addition to that, dark vision 60 feet. The Wuthering Heights Manor is kind of dark, guys, as well as passive perception 26. Common and undercommon languages. He's not really the smartest guy on the block. And, of course, challenge rating is BS. I just put 21 because it kind of works, just for me, personally. Let's talk traits now. Heart of Vengeance. He's been traveling non-stop between the mirror worlds. He's encountered so many Heathcliffs. He's kind of grown accustomed to it now. The fire, I figure because he's wearing leather armor, he'd be resistant to fire. Necrotic is gloom. He gains gloom resistance over time during the battle. And non-magical attacks, pretty straightforward. In addition to that, poison just kind of makes, he was a dead rabbit member. I'm sure they got poison plenty, as well as all the other conditions. So charmed and frightened, he can't really be frightened. He is, the definition of fear, and charmed, he has that one purpose, that one goal. Explosive emotions. Upon taking a certain type of damage, he automatically gains resistance to it until the start of his next turn. This trait activates once per round, meaning immediately after his turn, he gets damaged, he gains resistance to that kind of damage. If he's up against a bunch of mages, then he's kind of cooked. But if he's up against a bunch of melee players, or the melee player goes first right after him, then he's, probably going to be fine. In addition to that, spreading emotions. When an ally or summon is killed, he resummons them at full HP. However, he gains disadvantage on his next attack, and the person who killed that ally gains advantage on their next attack. So he gains disadvantage for reviving them. In addition, summons may be revived without limit, but humanoids such as dwarves, elves, players, they can only be revived once in, paying respects to the actual identity. Since, I built him as a level 6 ID. Now, moving on from that, amalgamated resentment. If the explosive emotions resistance is up, when he reaches 300 HP for the first time, he gains resistance to all damage on the next turn instead of one type, until the beginning of his next turn. Pretty straightforward there. In addition to that, continuing revenge. Reaching 160 hit points for the first time, removes all status effects on himself, releasing a wave of psychic mirror energy through sheer despair. All targets makes a wisdom saving throw DC 18 or be stunned until the beginning of their next turn. I'll explain these ones now. So he has a phase change, I believe, at 75% HP and 30%. These aren't exact numbers, but I figured they kind of fit. In addition to that, there's a thing that pretty much all Limbus bosses have these days, where they just kind of like have the damage from like bleed and rupture and all those statuses. Some of them even, you know, kind of throw in like, oh, only 10% of it goes through just because fuck you. But I just kind of gave him that. The having of it would pretty much just be removing all conditions and resetting himself. I remember the Don Quixote that I built a while ago also had that. Lastly, antagonism. When facing 4 or more opponents, he gains an additional attack action. However, when facing 3 or less, he may roll an additional damage dice for any attack up to twice per turn. That's pretty nice, I personally say. That's just me. Now, of course, all these traits are nice and dandy. Where the real meat is the actions. We have a lot of them. You're gonna see. Great Sword, Rending. Erlking Heathcliff makes a total of 3 melee attack actions or 1 start action. Equivalent of a spell, right? Or just, you know, like an action that takes up his whole action, right? When antagonism is activated, 4 melee attacks or 1 start action and 1 melee attack. It just stacks onto it. Double start actions are special condition ones. I'll explain those. So the first attack you're going to have is Fused Blade of Ruined Mirror Worlds. Normally, Great Sword Rending is what is, you know, Heathcliff's attack on the roof, where Catherine and he are the final boss fight. Fused Blade of the Ruined Mirror Worlds are when he's using his great sword against, you know, the opponents, you guys, the sinners, when he's with the dead rabbits. But I figured this one kind of sounds a little cooler, and this one is worthy of a name for his trait. So, yeah. Plus 15 to hit, 10 feet, 1 target, 22 damage, slashing, 9 necrotic, strength saving throw DC 20, or 2d8 additional force damage, and knocked prone. This is a really good attack, but this next one has stages to it. Ride for Death, Dullahan. Plus 12 to hit, 5 feet of reach, but you could make an argument for 10 once he's mounted. 1 target, 30 damage, bludgeoning. In addition, they must make a strength saving throw DC 20 or be stunned until Heathcliff's next turn. If he is mounted while doing this attack, then the target rolls at disadvantage for the save and takes an additional 2d12 lightning or bludgeoning damage. Bludgeoning for the medium or smaller sized creatures, lightning for larger, as you can't really fit them in the coffin. But yeah, this is just, you know, to pay respects for the ID that I built. Remember, level 6. Yeah, he just kind of does that, I noticed, when fighting distortions, abnormalities, human type creatures, that sort of thing. It just kind of switches around, especially for the bigger creatures. But yeah, moving on from that, here's a start action. Glass Shard of Wailing Sorrow, very similar to Behead Heathcliff's. He slams his blade into the ground, sending a 60-foot line, 5-foot wide, mirror shards forward. They must make Dex 20 saving throw and take 33 slashing damage on a failure or half on success. This is very similar. Horizontal cut instead of stabbing into the ground, 20-foot cone forward, 22 Dex saving throw, 33 slashing damage on a failure. Lastly, Withstand. He braces himself, losing the rest of his turn, gaining resistance to all damage plus 4 AC until the start of his next turn. This does not affect his summons, however, if he is summoning creatures, which we'll talk about next. If he takes damage for the first time, so they beat his 24 AC, updated to 24 AC, then he may use Ride for Death Dullahan as a reaction against the attacker, no matter if he is on, of course, the Dullahan or not, mounted or not. Lastly, of course, we have the 2 starred actions. One is Wild Hunt of Desolation. It's a summoning spell, pretty much. First turn of combat only, he may choose to forego his action and either summon 2d4 creatures or the same number of creatures as opponents that are on the field. So, for example, if there are maybe like 100 opponents on the field, you know, he could summon 100 enemies. But if there's only like 3 enemies, he would choose to roll that 2d4 kind of deal, right? But usually you're only fighting a party of 4, so it is just really up to you if you want to go with that safe 4 or maybe potentially get a 5 enemies. But remember, they're all going to be weak, as each requires a CR rating of 4 or lower, or player level 4 or lower if you have those prepared, and a total CR sum of 20 or less. Meaning if you have 5 summons, they can all be, you know, CR challenge rating 4. But if you have 6, some of them have to be 3. That's just going to be the deal, you know? But yeah, you can also have half challenge rating creatures if you want those to be your summons. Completely up to you guys. They appear within 10-foot radius of Heathcliff and act immediately on his initiative, meaning the moment they're summoned, they start taking action. Great stuff. And next, lastly, Sorrow and Lament in the Erlking's Wake. If Erlking Heathcliff isn't currently mounted, he summons the Dullahan and mounts it, costing him the non-attack action of his turn, the equivalent of pretty much one start action. So like a normal spell or like, an action that takes up the turn, right? However, if he uses Sorrow and Lament in the Erlking's Wake while mounted, he charges forward anywhere between a 30 to 120 foot line, up to his choice, 10 foot wide, slashing any enemies in his path. Creatures must make a Dexterity saving throw, DC 22, taking 33 slashing damage on a failure, half as much on a success. Afterwards, an additional Wisdom saving throw, DC 22, and they take 11 Psychic and 11 Force damage on a failed save, none on a success. This is kind of the big one. I think it's like Mourn, Sorrow, Lament. That's the one for the actual ID that you get access to. The minus coin skill that Wild Hunt Heathcliff has, right? And I figured, that's really cool. Let's, just pay some respects to it, and let's just throw this in there. It's very similar to pretty much Ride for Death Dullahan, but yeah, I just really like this move, and it is also a name I kind of have to throw in there, because I'm trying to use all of Heathcliff's names, attack names, as well as trait names. Next, of course, bonus actions. Smackdown, the big one. Makes an additional Ride for Death Dullahan attack at disadvantage. However, if the attack hits, he deals an extra 10 bludgeoning damage. That's pretty big for players at level 12. Not gonna lie, it stacks up over time. Hollow Coffin Mace, utilizing both chains and raw strength, he slams Catherine's coffin on his back onto his opponent of his choosing within 20 feet. Till the start of his next turn, he has advantage on melee attacks against that target specifically. And lastly, the Nightmarish Vengeance returned. Erlking Heathcliff chooses a target to make a Wisdom saving throw, DC 20. Target fails, Heathcliff gains advantage against them until the end of combat. This bonus action can only be used once per opponent per combat. Meaning, for example, if you do it on someone and it succeeds, you can stack Hollow Coffin Mace on it. There's drunk people outside. Man, this is crazy. But anyways, yeah, it stacks. You can have double advantage on a character, but if it fails, you can't do it on them again. You've just lost access to that ability against that character. That's pretty much how I want to go about it, because I don't want the infinite advantage to stack up like completely. I want the chance of it to not actually happen. Next, of course, reactions. Resolving grudges. Opponent within 10 feet damages one of his allies or summons. He makes one Fused Blade of Ruin Mirror Worlds attack against that creature with advantage. And another Smackdown. If a creature misses him with a melee attack, Heathcliff can retaliate with a Ride for Death Dullahan as a reaction with a -2 modifier to hit. Makes it a little harder for him to do reactions, but when he does have access to them, he has really powerful attacks just to, beat down on his enemies. That's kind of his gist, his gimmick, He has 3 legendary actions now, of course. One is Revenge. I don't know why, but my roommate's phone just keeps ringing. This is like the 3rd time it's happened tonight, within the span of 30 minutes. So anyways, Revenge, 1 action. He makes a Fused Blade of Mirror Worlds attack. And next is Self-Loathing, 2 actions. He gains resistance to the last type of damage he took. If the attacker dealt 2 types of damage, then pretty much, like, for example, slashing damage with a sword and then Green Flame Blade, he may choose which one he gains resistance to. He gains a permanent resistance to that until the end of combat. Yeah, I figure this one's a really nice one, but he can only do this pretty much once a turn, as the other one will be used for Revenge. And of course, here's your description, disheveled ID of Heathcliff. Here's all his looks in battle, the Dullahan, etc., etc. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that was a pretty long recording, and this wasn't even my first long recording take. Happy Halloween, guys. But yeah, anyways, if you guys want a really quick rundown of it, I'll give you one more. Basically, big tank. He has the ability to hit really hard and increases AC to absurd amounts. In addition to that, not just hitting hard with normal attacks, he can also summon creatures. These creatures are of course weaker than him, significantly so, and weaker than the players they are fighting. However, they do pose a threat when there are, for example, 5 or 6 of them, maybe 6 or 7 of them. That would be an issue, but priority, if you want to defeat this guy, just beat down on him, just throw all of your spells at him, maybe try to get the wizard to go in first, throw in maybe a cold damage spell, and then just whack on him with magic weapons. That personally is what I see the best method about going about killing this guy. He has a lot of health, and he hits really hard. Do not try to prolong battle with this guy. He would probably kill you. And that'd be pretty wild, wouldn't it? But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching this one. Don't worry, Catherine's coming out tomorrow. Erlking Heathcliff was a joy to make. I'll publish him after I finish revising him a couple more times, or I'll just publish him right now. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, happy Halloween, goodbye and good night. I'll see you soon.